We are ready to discuss the demand, trade, and yet the market reaction this week with Jerry Gidel right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, we had another full week of trade in the markets, and the stock market has rebounded this week, but when it comes to commodity trading, it's still very slow.
Yes, there's been a lot of, well, earlier in the week we had the influences of uh, the weekly crop progress that came up near or at the eyesight of expectations, and it was a pretty good week. The interesting twist about it is the weather that happened over the weekend and then kind of went along this coming week could impact our numbers going forward. We had like that situation of it went from like 8% to 18% on beans, and corn we went up from 12 to 24. And normally we see that sector go up to 35 to 40 this coming week on corn, and on beans up to the 30% level or so also. And that but I'm not sure we're going to get there, but that's something that's going to help us next week a little bit more than maybe uh, towards the end of this week. I think beans definitely got part of that feature. Wheat also was, boy, they corn, and they had rains in Texas and also Oklahoma, and they really slammed the wheat market. But it stayed basically at Oklahoma and Texas area, maybe a little in southeast Kansas where the corn and soybeans at, but really didn't end up helping western Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota didn't have that much rain either. So I think that there's realization that the crop conditions on wheat on Monday could also go down. But it's going to be quite interesting here. I've heard some interesting comments about Western Kansas that, here we are hitting out, excuse me, heading out the crop up there in that part of the world, which is important. Uh, Yet it's not even foot and a half, maybe 2 foot tall. That's very short from there. So that you're wondering about how much capability that crop's going to have when it gets harvested later in June here at this point. From there, the market activity, uh, as I said, kind of bounced back. We had some pretty, well, I'd say all right exports. They weren't that fabulous here on Thursday. But the interesting thing about it right now in the world of, we've had such good progress on our sales at this point. Good example here in corn. We're 2.3 billion bushels already committed on sales. We are only going to go up to about 2.6. So we're about 300 million away. But last year at this time, we were 1.84. So here you go. Here's a number that we're over nearly 400 million ahead of last year's pace. That's the other twist on this thing that things are slowing down on our demand, and that because of South American supplies coming in. But we've also shipped a lot of stuff to this point, and it's going to be interesting. And beans, we're at 1.74 billion bushels. USDA is only thinking we're going to end up exporting 1.825. So here we are, about 80 million or so away from the projection, and we're 18, 19 weeks away before we get to the 1st of September here in 2025. So definitely some interesting issues going on there in our
Yes,
exports.
I don't think the markets right now are pricing a lot about South America, but there is one consultancy in Brazil that this week has projected that the ending stocks for soybeans would be only 3 million metric tons, which will be one of the lowest in several years.
Right, right. Well, I think it has to do with the fact that for all indications here, China's going to be a heavy buyer down there in both places, relatively speaking, both in Brazil and Argentina. And and I don't disagree that the Chinese could be a big buyer down there as they try to limit their purchases here. Will they be a different attitude next year if they come to some agreement on things? They kind of did this last time around back in 2019, that they were optimistic about being a big buyer. They bought stuff for that particular year. And then 2020 comes along, the election shows up, and Trump isn't in presidency, so they change their mind. And in general, they have an interesting dichotomy. They like the quality of the protein that excuse me, the quality of the beans, but they don't specifically like the protein. But these days, the scenario in China is that they're making some really crazy statements. I don't know if there was a statement out that they were going to end up taking their protein demand down to 10% going forward, and they were going to end up in, uh, feeding insects. And I don't know. There's lots of plays here to say that they're going to not be a big buyer of protein and that, but I don't know that right now their economy is kind of sluggish, and and that nobody's buying the pork that they were 3 or 4 years ago, but that could change pretty quickly in the long term. So I
Yes,
think
but I think for sure in this month of May, they will buy a lot of soybeans from Brazil.
oh, definitely. Uh, I don't suspect that they're going to be any kind of well, it's kind of twisted here. You're exactly right. I agree that they're not logic going to buy it. There was a sale, excuse me, of out this week in the data that caught a lot of people off guard, myself a little bit too. They had a 339,000 ton sale to China in soybeans. And I kept thinking it had to all be a switch from unknown, or because they still had a few sales on the books, and also that's not unusual that they'd buy something and list it under known and switch it later. But the unknown category only went down 47,000 tons. And so that's about 1.3 million switches. And so I don't know. I kind of feel like that that purchase might have actually there, because the shipments they sent out was about 5.5 million in some boat that went out the door. And so maybe they just bought that scenario. But in general, what happens in Beijing doesn't always get back to the people that are actually buying it for their feeding operations and things like that over there. But in general, it does suggest that China is going to be a hit and miss buyer for us here going forward uh, on soybeans at this point. But the interesting twist is that this could be a streak in here for 3 or 4 months, and then all of a sudden next fall they might be looking at some U.S. purchases. But right now at least we still have to get through this whole Trump negotiations with people around the world here. China's got a lot of news the last few days. Earlier in the week it was Japan. Last week it was India. We got lots of talk, but nothing's really officially been announced, which is a
Yeah,
little disappointing.
nothing official so far, but you think next week are we still going to be talking about that unless there is an announcement or the market will move into another factor?
Uh, Well, I kind of suspect that there will be disappointments if we do not hear something from either India or Japan of some type of announcements being out there. China, no, that's not going to happen on that right away. And then at this point, it could be Korea, could be couple other ones out there, but we really do need to find one particular longer term buyer of ag stuff to get something worked out here that would work out. Now, the biggest thing right now is that Japan's kind of backed off on what they wanted to do because they wanted to get some of their restrictions loosened up on auto sales because that's a huge, huge factor of their, in, country selling autos in the U.S. And interestingly, they make a lot of autos in the U.S. And I'm not sure how that all works out on percentages and things of that nature. And I don't think at this point, even if there's a like a if they Japan's Corolla that's made in the U.S. Is taxed for 25%. I don't know what that means. That's another frustrating factor for all this stuff because people don't realize that the world car companies make things all around the world in different pieces and different things. And so how that all gets worked out. Right now, our president thinks it's easy enough just to put the 25% on taxes for on anything when some of it's already made here.
Yeah, so what else would you like to add? What else will you expect for next?
Well, we're going to get ourselves organized here for the report out on the 12th. At this point, I, I'm kind of optimistic that maybe we'll see a little bit of pop in some of the exports, or excuse me, in some of the domestic demand, I should say first, and that maybe tightening up for corn and soybeans. Wheat, no, we're just not selling it there. That's going to potentially go 15 or 20 the other way on old crop. Now, uh, in the past, there's been no change, and I don't sense there will be this time either, on the planting levels or the so-called harvested acres and also crop sizes projections on 181 bushel yield on corn or the 52 bushel yield on beans. I still have a lot of issues with that. No reason to start talking about it now. It'll still be an issue 2 weeks from now and 3 weeks from now. But at this point, I think those world numbers for 2000 or US numbers and world numbers are going to be watched, but I don't think there's going to be any super surprises there on that. Wheat, uh, I kind of feel like that number is going to be down from on crop size than what people think, but I got to put my pen to the pencil on that this coming week and come up with an idea for winter wheat. This will also be our first one of the year out there on May 12th. So lots of different things coming at us on that day. Uh, Hopefully, we start to show that we've got maybe some issues on wheat production in the U.S. Maybe we're not selling exports, but maybe we're not going to have as big a crop. And on the demand side of things here, maybe there's a few things that's going to tighten up old crop corn and soybean carryovers moderately. There's no big flash in the pan here on stuff along the way, but overall, the May 12th numbers coming out from the USDA, including the 25, 27 US and world numbers, will be good ones to get a look at when we get there. But we got 2 times to talk about them. I got next week's, and then we'll have the report.
All right, thank you very much.
Have a good weekend, sir.